Okay, welcome back for the next Coptic lesson. Let's start with our prayer here. Let me switch over to the screen. So let's pray here together. هنرفع فيوت ونبشيري نبرمم ثواب ونوت نوت آمين. جيت نيوت تخلني في قوي معرف توبو نجيت كران معرس إن جيتك متفورو كيت هناف معرف شوبي إن فريتي خنفته ننهي جنبي كاهي بين أويك انتراستي نيف نانم فو أو كان يتيرو نان إيفول إن فريتي هون إن تنكو إيفول إني أتيرون إنتان إرو أو إمبرنتي نكون بيرازموس على نحمين إيفول هابي بتهو إن بخريستوس إسوس بنشويس جاتوك تاتي متورو نمتيقوم نمتيو شانين تنيني تيرو أمين خنبرانا مبيوت نمبشيري نمتنم مثواب ونوتي نوت أمين. Okay, so we'll get started here. So I did send the file today, trying to get it uploaded for the homework assignment. I just took out a section, like we were saying earlier, from the life story of Saint Shenouda. I pulled out one paragraph that I would just like to ask you guys to from Coptic into English, and that'll be our first assignment there. So just check on the website, and hopefully the administrators will be able to get that uploaded here pretty soon. So last time we left off this in this section here. Okay, we left off, I think, at the part of Plentifusima. So without further ado here, we'll continue on. Okay. So let's just read it together. Aftif eminemo en soti charon efmu et oyen uru eheri ego. Okay, so let's break it up. So aftif. So again, it's a past tense. Af, third person singular masculine. So he. Tif, remember, comes from ti, to give. So instead of saying like TMO, it's in this pronominal form where it's T, give myself, and it kind of it goes through these conjugations. But remember, you're not only ones you're ever really going to see are T, him, T, give her. Titan, T, Thino, Tito. Those are really the only ones you'll see. So here, he gave him. Now, who's the him that he's talking about? He's talking about himself. We know that because following that, it says Amin Imof. Amin Imof. So Imof, you know, it's the direct object for him, meaning him, but it's still, who's the him again? Whenever we see Emin Immo, it's going to be himself. So basically, Emin Immo, those two words are clarifying which him this is or showing right here. So whenever you see Emin Immo, it corresponds to this. It basically means himself. So he gave himself. Because otherwise, without Emin Immo, and you just look at this part only, it says he gave him. So who's the him? We have clarification that follows it, Emin Immo. So that means he gave himself. So this is going to correspond to this in all cases. So, like for example, if it was like themselves, it would say of Tito Mau. It would be Tito instead of T, and then Mau. They gave themselves. So that's what I'm saying. This part corresponds with this over here. Okay. So he gave himself in Soti. Soti means to save. And so basically, he gave himself to save Charon. Charon is basically, it means for us. Remember, we talked about those prepositions. So sometimes when you have these kind of idioms where you have like, you know, the verb, you know, kind of like a phrase that usually is seen together. It can be sometimes idiomatic, which means it means something a little bit different. So, soti, to save, and charon, you know, like literally like under us, but it's like for us. So that this is kind of idiomatic, is it's like a ransom. Okay. So he gave himself to save for us. So in other words, he gave himself as a ransom for us. Okay. Ifmu. So remember, it's just the preposition by itself meaning to, and then the definite article f, and then mu, to death. It literally means to the dead, but it's to death. Now, to save under us, or in other words, as a ransom for us, to death. So he gave himself to death for us. It's oi. Remember, oi is the qualitative form of iri. So death, which has the quality of being uru. What's uru? Uru means king. So which has the quality of being king, or in other words, which reigns, because the king reigns over something. But literally it's saying, which has the quality of being king, ehri egon. So on top of us or over us. So putting it all together, he gave himself to save under us, or in other words, as a ransom for us. So he gave himself as a ransom for us to death. So he gave himself to death as a ransom for us, which has the quality of, or which is being king, or in other words, which is king, or which reigns over us. So he gave himself to death, which reigns over us. Why? So it's talking about the death, because death would reign over us now. So it's saying this, giving this demonstrative pronoun. Now, phi, this, Again, the relative here. Nav amoni. Remember, again, we're getting back into the passive voice. Remember, because whenever we talk about them, but there's no them, it's the passive voice. This which they reigned. So you say this which reigned. Excuse me, this which we were. Amoni means to hold or to bind. So this which we were bound, because it says this which they bound us, but there's no they that bound us. That's the passive voice. So we talked about that in the last lesson. So this which we were bound, because amoni means to bind or hold. So this which we were bound. Evol hitot. Evol again. Remember, we're gonna need to just get used to some of these prepositional phrases that we were learning before. Evol hitot. Through it. So this pronoun here, pronoun suffix, is talking still about death, which is here. So death which reigned over us, this which we were bound by it. In toi evil, we, this is the present continuous. So we being toi evil, remember we talked about it a little bit last time. Toi evil, so it means, comes from ti evil. So ti evil to give to, from, but literally it means to sell. Whenever we see ti and evil, it's going to mean to sell. So we being sold, hiten, upon the hands of our sins. So we being sold on the account of our sins. Okay. And then of shinaf. So remember we have she, and then it's reflexive. So what does that mean? This is going to correspond to this. So the past tense of he, shinaf, of shinaf, he went. So again, it's like an aftunf, for example. Remember, aftunf means he rose. Like aftunf evol khaniyat ma'ut aftunf. But just because it has the off here and the phi, the phi here, it doesn't mean like he went himself or he raised himself. No, it's just reflexive. Doesn't necessarily mean that. So it's like in Arabic, for example, you say ana mashit. So the ana corresponds to the mashit. Heya mishit. Or ana omt, heya amet. It doesn't mean like heya amet. It changes part of the words, but it doesn't mean that like he raised himself or she raised herself. No, it's just a reflexive. So it's kind of like a reflexive. This causes this. So off shinaf. So he went. Meaning to or towards. Hasid, down. So to down. So in other words, he went downwards. It's a directional adverb, indicating the direction. So he went downwards. He went to down, or he went downwards. Again to, meaning to. Amenti is like Hades. It's just a proper noun, meaning Hades. So he went down to Hades. Evol hiten. So again, this is just these prepositions. Evol means whenever we see evol hiten, it's basically going to mean like through or by. P is Stavros. Stavros is the cross. So he descended into Hades through the cross. And the people respond, Pilaos, Amin, Tina, I believe. Tina. I believe. Okay. It's a little bit tricky, but it all makes sense when you put it together step by step. Okay, then the next part. Then the priest, he weed, says, Afton. Okay. Afton, we just talked about this, it's reflexive. So it's not he raised himself, no. It's he rose. It's just reflexive. Okay. So this verb conjugation corresponds to this tense prefix here. That's all that means. So he rose. Evulchen, so means from, in, so from in or from among. Ni, the further demonstrative, and then eth, which is a relative. And ma'ut is the qualitative of mu, to die. So he rose from among those who are dead. He rose from among those who are dead. Or in other words, we just say he rose from the dead. Because ni, eth, ma'ut are those, the further demonstrative. Eth, the relative. And then ma'ut, the qualitative of dead. So he rose from among those who are dead, or he rose from the dead. In P, definite article, and then ehou. Ehou means day. And remember when we talked about numbering, we talked about ma is the prefix. It changes the number shomt, number 3, into mah shomt. It means third. So in mah shomt. So this is just the particle here, mah shomt. So the day third. So the third day. So he rose from the dead, or he rose from among the dead on the day third, or he rose from the dead on the third day. So just to kind of give you the only variable of this, well, we'll talk about it later. It's with the number 2, but we won't talk about it right now. And Piehu and Masham. Okay? Off Shinaf, again, we just talked about this. He went. So we had episit a minute ago. Episit is a directional adverb that means downwards. And now we just talked about he went down to Hades. And now we're saying Off Shinaf Shoy. So what's Shoy? Shoy is a high place. So Shoy is the high place. So he went to the high place, or he went upwards, because it's a directional adverb. He went upwards. Meaning to. And then ni, the plural of etfe. So he went upwards to the heavens. So in other words, we say he ascended into the heavens. Of Hemsi, again means to sit. So he sat. Saw is denoting a location. So we say at. Tik, your, and then owinam just means right. It doesn't mean like a right hand or right foot or anything. It just means right. Like the location on the right. So saw at your right. So we say at your right hand, but it just means at your right. So he sat at your right, or he went up to the heavens. He sat at your right hand, at your right. You can put hand in parentheses. At your right hand, if you father. So it's like the vocative. You know, we don't always have to have the O in front of it, but we just have the definite article. But when it's the vocative, it basically means he sat at your right hand, O Father. Okay, and then we look at this, we see aftosh, but it has the E in front of it. It's basically like the relative. You can think of it as which, he, tosh. Tosh means to to appoint or decide, or basically in other terms, it means like the border of something, like the surround, like a border marking, or to delineate, the delineation. I think that's probably the best way to think of it. It's like some type of like delineation or a line. So in other words, he has appointed or delineated, his delineated. But it has this almost like relative in front of it. So we'd say having delineated or having appointed. So he sat at the right hand. He sat at your right hand, O Father, having appointed. So I know in the liturgy, I think it says he appointed a day. I think is what it says, just off the top of my head. He appointed a day. So but you can think of it as, again, as having appointed in uehu, a day. So there's the indefinite article here. Having appointed a day. A day of what? A day in tishaveyu. T means to give. So it's another one of those compound verbs. T. And then shevio. Shevio means to change. So to give change. Or in other words, to replace, or to give instead. Phi again is referring to the day. Phi ete, if not, in the future tense. Uon he'evol. Uon means to show. Evol, to show forth. So he has appointed a day. This which, again, it's the relative. Again, this is referring to the day. He has appointed a day, this, again, this day, which he will show forth in chit. The preposition from chen, in. So this which he will show forth in it. So on this day that he has delineated, or having delineated this day, this which he will show forth in it. To tihap. Again, it's like tishaveyu. Tihap. Hap means is like a judge or a judgment. So tihap is to give a judgment. In other words, to judge. So he will appear in it to judge, or in other words, to give judgment. To give judgment to. Equimeni is a Greek word meaning the inhabitation, or in other words, we just say to the world, but it's the inhabited parts of the world, in which he will which he will appear in it to give judgment to the inhabitation, or to the world. Chen in u dikeosin. Dikeos, you may not recognize the word dikeos, means right or just. So chen, remember we talked about whenever we have chen, like chen ometni, chen utagro, chen, whatever, it's turning this into an adjective now. So chen udike osini doesn't mean in righteousness, but it means we'll judge the world rightly, or justly. That's the kind of the best way to translate it. But you can see literally it means in a righteousness, but we don't translate it as in a righteousness. We translate it as rightly or justly. Oh, and if not, again, just a simple, the future tense. If not, t means to give. And here it says something that we'll see. P-O-Y, P-O-Y. The one. I think we talked about this 1 or 2 semesters ago. POA, it means he will one by one, or he will give each one. You know, if you're talking about like, you know, like a walk in 2 by 2, you're going to say moshi, snov. You know, you kind of repeat it like that. That's how they would say like 1 by 1 or 2 by 2 or each one. You know, that's kind of how you would say that. So so POA, it means he will give the one, or he'll give each one. Kata is a Greek particle meaning according. Nif, I'm going to put plural possessive adjective for the third person singular masculine. So his, ehevioi. Ehevioi is the plural for hub. Hub means a work or deed. So ehevioi means works or deeds. So because this is a plural, that's why this has to be plural. It has to correspond. It's almost like, again, like a reflex. Well, it's not technically classified as reflexive, but it's almost like a reflex. This has to correspond with this. So nif ihvo. If it was just one deed, it would be pif hub. Pif hub. But since it's not just one deed, it's his deeds. It's nif, that's plural, and ihvo is pluralized as well. Remember, we have some of those irregular verbs that change into the plural. They change, or nouns that change. I mean, like itfe and nithio. So here we have hub and heavio. And another example is son is a brother, and esneyo is the brethren. So there's several of those irregular ones that they're irregular plurals. And then pilaos, the people. And this is Greek here, but you know, we'll just point out a few of the words that just grammatically without any just vocabulary without any grammar. Kata, according, eleos, mercy, and kireia, Lord. So according to your mercy, O Lord. And it means and then me, not. Kata, according. And then amartias is, I guess, more like sins. And then imon is us. According to sins, us. So according to your mercy, O Lord, and not according to our sins. Okay. So most of the parts of the liturgy, actually, you can see they're pretty straightforward. It's all just simple tenses, nothing really too advanced. This is just the same thing. Yeah. So that's why we're able to kind of go through this pretty fast. It's all, again, pretty straightforward for the most part. Okay. Then the next part, the Oid, the priest, Afko. Okay. Afko, remember, means to put or place. De is a Greek particle, again meaning but or and. So Afko, de, non, indirect object for us. So he put for us. Echri. Echri, again, is a meaning downwards. So he put down for us. So that's why we just say he instituted. That literally means he put down for us. So it's like, think of it as like he's laying down for us or putting down something for us. So he put down for us or he instituted for us. And then the direct object is in the opposite order here. M painishti. So remember, some of the adjectives go in front of the noun, whereas most of them go after the noun. Nishti, meaning great or big, goes before. It's one of the ones that goes before. So you wouldn't say mysterion et oien nishti, for example. No, you would say nishti and mysterion. Okay? So he put down for us, or he instituted for us, M, the direct object, pi nishti, this great mysterion, obviously from the Greek mystery. Inte of T met evsavis. Met evsavis is, again, it's a Greek meaning divine. So in other words, we say is godliness, but it's kind of like divineness or divinity. So he laid down for us this mystery of godliness or divinity. Thish. So remember Thish, we talked about Thosh a minute ago. Because remember we said Thosh, he delineated a day. So here again he is being delineated or being determined or decided, basically. Because literally like Thosh is like a border around a country, around a city, or around a wall. You're drawing a border, you're delineating something. That's kind of the precise way. So you have to think of it in a kind of a conceptual way when you're thinking of it, and with these kind of other graphical senses or non-geographical understanding. So F thish, so present continuous, he, and then thish against the qualitative form of delineation. So he being determined, or he being decided, or he being having drawn a line around it, made that decision or marking off. So he being determined, tif, to give him, and again we don't have the aminim like we do in the other instance. So we have to assume it's going to be himself in this case. We don't have that extra amin imuf to make it clear that it's himself, because we don't have amin imuf in this instance like we did in the previous one. But from the context, we can understand it and we assume that that's what it means, but we don't have that extra guarantee that that's what it means. But we can assume that that's what it is. So he being determined to give himself, again, even though it doesn't say amin imuf, ifmu, to death, again, like we talked about. Kha, under, so it kind of means like instead of. Kha, onch. Onch, remember we talked about before, it means life. It's like the famous, type of cross with a loop on top of it, the onch that you see in like the ancient Egypt. It looks like a cross with a loop on top of it. It's the key of life, or the cross. So that's where onch means life. So on. So Cha'ib on, for the life, M, cosmos, the world, for the life of the world. And then Elithos, whether or not your church includes Elithos or not, but it means that Elithos is truly. And Pistiv Omen. Pistos is like a faith or faithful person. Pistiv Omen. We believe. So truly we believe, or we believe. The Oweeb, the priest. Chi. Remember, chi is the opposite of ti. Ti means to give, chi means to take. So he took, and uoik. Oik is bread. So uoik is a bread. But we don't say he took a bread. We just say he took bread. Gen. Again, this is indicating motion as opposed to he gen. So he took bread upon with motion. So upon with motion. Nifjig. Jig means hand. But nifjig is plural, so his hands. So he took bread upon his hands. Again, because this is indicating motion and towards the top of his hands. So he took bread upon his hands. which eth owed, which are holy. Okay, which are holy. So he took bread upon his holy hands. And it continues to give several adjectives as a description. So achini is a spot. So achini means without spot. So we say spotless. So achini is a spot. Atachini is spotless. And toleb is blemish or flaw. So toleb is without blemish or without flaw. So he took bread upon his hands, which are holy, and another adjective, and spotless and unblemished or unflawed or flawless. And the next adjective, makarion. Makarion comes from the Greek makarios or blessed. And riftancho, the final adjective, ti and onch. We talked about it. It's a compound causative verb. It comes from ti and onch. So tancho means to give life. So ref, remember we talked about that prefix coming from doer of or romi if. So a doer of giving life. So the hands are doers of giving life. So they're life giving or reviving. Okay, so putting it all together, he took bread upon his hands, which are holy, spotless, flawless, and blessed, and life giving or reviving. And then pilaos say tin nahti. We believe. Nahti means to believe. So we believe. What do we believe? We believe je, quotation marks. We believe that, quotation. Phi, this, it's the near demonstrative. Phi pe is. Chen omith me. Remember we talked about chen omith me? In truth. So you can say we believe that this is true, or probably if you're going to be consistent with how we're been talking about and translating things, chen omith me is in a truth, but you're going to think of it as kind of like in a descriptive way. So you can think of, so we believe truly this is. So truly, comma, this is. So in other words, this is true. Amen. Amen. And everybody probably knows that amen is from the Hebrew meaning so be it. Or the Coptic equivalent of amen is es eshovi. Okay. Okay, next part, Pioweed, the priest. Af gosht. Gosht means to look. And again, we talked about ibshoy, directional adverbs. What does it mean? Does it mean upwards or downwards? It means upwards. Because shoy is a high place. So he looked upwards. To heaven, to the heaven, or to the sky. Ha ro means to you or towards you. So he looked upwards to the sky towards you. Fi etafuf, fi eta, that which belongs to him. Remember we talked about those possessive pronouns that we talked about earlier. I think we made a table of it here, if I remember correctly. We may not have. Probably did. Yeah. So these are those possessive pronouns. So foi, again, belongs to me, belongs to you, feminine, belongs to him, belongs to her, etc. Fietafuf, so we say belongs to him. Okay, so that which him in yours. So that which is his father. So that which, in other words, that which is that which is his father, which belongs to him. And then it's saying, who is that? If God. So he looked upwards to heaven towards you, that which is his father, O God. O Efnib, and the master, ente of Uon Niven. Uon means person. Now it also means, remember, if you remember, it's a different word, but it's spelled the same. Uon means, to have something, but in a completely different way. It's not the same word. It's just spelled the same, but it's not the same word whatsoever. It means person also. Niven means every, so every person. So you got to be careful with that. So, if you see like Uon Niven, but like Uon Ente Piromi, that means there is of this person, and Gom, for example. Uon Ente Piromi and Ugom. So that means the person, there is of the person a book, or the person has a book. So you can see Uon here, even though it's spelled the same, is completely different than Uon here. Because Uon means person in this instance, and this indicates possession, or there is, it means like basically there is of this person a book, or in other words, a person has a book. So a person has a book. But here, Uon spelled exactly the same means like person. It's just like in the hymn of Ekachosi, or in the doxology for St. John the Baptist. We say, Uon ton chen ni genmisi te nihiomi f oni mo, right? So, ente, that's the negative of the past tense. Uon, person, so ton. So no person rose, right? In Misi, in the births or the birthings. Remember, because whenever we see jin, it's like you're going to take this verb, Misi means to birth. You're going to add an ing to it, in the birthings. Inte nihiomi, of women. Nihiomi, again, the plural of it is tieshimi. Tieshimi means the woman, nihiomi is the women. So, past tense, person, so no person rose among the birthings of women, if oni immo. So oni comes from ini, so it's the qualitative of ini, meaning to be like you. Okay, so no person rose from among the births of women like you. So this is another example of on, meaning person, not possession. Okay. Okay. It's off. So that's kind of like a temporal, we called it. It's off. So when he shepehmot. So shepehmot, shep is to receive. So when he had received grace, or when you receive grace, it's you're thankful for something. So when he had given thanks, and then the people say Amen, so be it. So when he had given thanks, then what happened? Af ismo ero. Ismo means to bless. Ero, he blessed it. people say again, Amin. And then the priest says, Af'ir agazin emmo. Okay? So you can recognize the root word agaya. Agaya means holy. And then remember air. Whenever we have this pre-nominal form of iri, to be or become or make, and it's prefixed to whether it's a Coptic or a Greek noun, it turns that Coptic or Greek noun into a verb. So holy, so he made holy, or in other words, sanctify. That's what sanctify means, to make holy. He sanctified. So what's emof? Going back up here, the emof is still talking about this bread. So he sanctified the bread. He sanctified it. Or in other words, he made it agaya, or he made it holy. And the people say, pistef omen, it comes like pistos, meaning faith, and homologeia is like a confess, and doxa is like doxasi, to glorify. So we believe, we confess, and we glorify. Okay. Hioib, the priest, and then the past tense again, af. Fash comes from the verb fosh, meaning to divide. That's the complete form or the full form. And then the pronominal form is fash. I think I've never really come across it. I'm just guessing off the top of my head, but I think it's fash is the pre-nominal form, and then that's the pre-pronominal form. So push MP oik, so divide the bread, or fetch p oik. And the only difference is here you have this particle or you don't have this particle. And then here, this suffix pronoun replaces this whole p oik. So that's the difference between the complete form, the nominal form, the pronominal form. Pronominal, pronoun. Prenominal, because nominal is the noun. Okay. So he divided it. Aftif, he gave it. It's not himself, so he didn't give himself because we don't have the minimum, but we know he divided it and he gave it. He gave it to who? And ni'ete, those which. Nu, remember we talked about those possessive pronouns. Those which belong to him. And then the adjectives follow it. Agios, holy, and Mathitis, disciples. So those which belong to him, holy disciples. So he gave it to his holy disciples, which belong to him. And more adjectives, apostolos et oed. Apostles which are holy, or holy apostles. Present continuous, saying it. Literally, saying her, but saying it. Because they don't have it in Coptic. And what are they saying? Je, this is the quote. Je, chi. Remember we talked about chi means take, eat, evol, and chit, from this masculine thing, which is the bread, from it. Tiro. Remember, because we talked about tiro, means all. And I think we had over here somewhere the Hero. Remember, it's the plural of the third person, or the second person plural, can be either one. So all of you. So take, eat from it, all of you. Because that's what he said to his apostles, his holy apostles, his holy apostles and saintly disciples. He said to them, you, basically you, it's the imperative, take, eat from it, all of you. By this, for this, pepa soma, for this is my body. Soma is a Greek word meaning body. For this is my body, or flesh. Et, this is the relative, which, and then with the present, when we have the relative with the present, it's etu, which they, future, na, etu na, fesh. Remember we talked about that a minute ago. It means divide, which they will divide it. So, but there's no they, so it means which will be divided. Okay? Egentino, upon you, or in other words, on your behalf, which will be given for you, as egentino, on your behalf or upon you. So this is my body, which they will divide it. So this is my body, which will be divided for you. Nim and han ke mish. So you'll see han mish a lot. Mish means a lot. Han mish, again, it's just the indefinite article meaning more than one, a lot. If that makes sense. Doesn't really make sense in English, but you see hanmish, like hanmish and mabrofitis and hanmish, you'll see hanmish a lot. So hanke ke means also, or other. It can mean also or other. But in this case, it means also. So it will be given for you and for, we say for many. So it'll be given for you and for many. But it'll be given for you and also for many. So, but you can see the breakdown of han, ke, mish. So this is the plural indefinite article. Ke meaning also or other, and mish means like many, like a large groups, like a large group. So it'll be given for you and for other large groups. You can think of it. In setif, so tif we already talked about. And they will give it. So in other words, it will be given, because there's no they. Remember, because it's against the passive voice. We're using the passive voice a lot here. That's why I was trying to talk about it a lot earlier. So, and they will give it, or in other words, and it will be given to ko evol. Remember, we talked about ko evol and teni novi, putting it all together, the forgiveness of the sins, or in other words, the putting away of sins. So it will be divided upon you and other large groups, and large groups also, that they may give it for the putting away of sins. Okay, but putting it in a way to make sense in English, which they will divide it for you and for many others to be given for the forgiveness of sins. Why? So this, arit comes from iri, but again, it's the imperative. Remember, we talked about the different forms of iri. So we can find it again. We just talked about it recently, so it should be here, hopefully. Iri, that's the complete form or full form. Is the pre-nominal form. Ait, I should switch these around. So ait is the pronominal form. Arit is the imperative form. Let me switch these around. And oi is the qualitative of iri. So this is the full form, pre-nominal form, pre-pronominal form, qualitative form, and imperative form. And I put these dots here to replace because you're going to add, in the pre-pronominal form, you're going to add the suffix pronoun, and in the imperative form, you're going to add the suffix pronoun. So phi, this, arit, so do him, or in other words, do it, because there's no, you're not talking about specific him. So this, do him, pa, my, to my, if midi, to make the thought. So make the thought is to remember. You want to make the thought of something, you think of something, you remember it. So this, do it, imperative, this do it to remember me. So this do in remembrance of me. Okay. And then faipech and omith me amin. So this is in truth, amin, or truly this is. Or this is, comma, truly. Okay, so we can stop there for today. And again, same thing. I did earlier today, finally get a chance to retype. I couldn't get the font to work properly and was having trouble with that, so I just had to retype the homework. So there's a couple of paragraphs, again, from the life of Shenouda, written by his disciple, St. Lisa, that I just wanted you guys to translate from Coptic into English. That's all you have to do is just translate it from Coptic into English. And turn it in for your assignment. So just please check the website for the date when that's due. And if you have any questions, again, send it to me, but also go ahead and send it along to the administrators as well, just because it's not easy for me to check the system regularly, but they can always get me the messages in a timely manner. Otherwise, we'll conclude and we'll pray together here. And I know there may be a lot of you people in Florida right now. We're hearing about the big hurricane there, but hopefully everyone stays safe over there. So we can pray together. خنفران مفيوت نمبشيري نمفتنم ثواب ونوت ينوت أمين. جيف نيوت اتخانيك قوي معرف توفو نجيف كران معرف إي إنجتك متقورو فتح هناك معرف شوبي إما فريتي خان متفاه ننهي جن بيكاهي بن أويك انتراستي نيف نان أنفو هو كان يتيرو نان إيفو إبا فريتي هون انتن كو إيفو إني أتأوون انتان إرو أمبير انتن أكون أتيرازموس الله نهمين إيفو الهاتي بتهو خن بخريستوس يسوس بنشويس جثوك تاتي متقورو نمتيقوم نمبيقو شاعنة امتنيانة تيرامين خنفران مبيوت مبشيري نمتنما ثواب ونوت أمين. Okay, everybody, good night, and we'll see you next time.